From the halls of Valhalla, it is I, your main man. Now, today we're going to talk about the often maligned half-elf. Now, the half-elf is one of those races in D&D, races, that doesn't seem to have a place in the mind's eye of the power gamer. They're shunted to the side and ignored. Half-elves are in the majority of editions of Dungeons & Dragons. They don't fill any sort of statistical area. They are generally just really shitty elves in terms of statistics. They don't have the advantages that humans have, and they don't have much in the way of the advantages that elves have. So why would you play a half-elf? Why do you play a half-elf if you're not a power gaming, mealy-mouthed piece of trash and you want to experience a character that's most bizarre and interesting? You're caught between two worlds, a vortex combined in the nexus point of the half-elf's flesh. The character itself can be an extremely rich tapestry of psychological attributes. They are able to bring out both their human heritage and their elven heritage, but it's not either one of those that you're playing for. It's that point in between, that strangeness, that not belonging to either world, not completely. You're an elf with a beard. You're a human with pointy ears and refined features. You aren't fully at home in either place, yet you can be at home in both places, in both ways, in both worlds, and you have a unique aspect to you. It gives you automatically, when you're playing something of a multi-species background, you have different origin story already right in the back, because you, even if you're not a particularly imaginative or creative player, you have to think, well, gosh, I'm half elf, so where's the elf part, where's the human part? And then you start thinking. It's a catalyst for the explosion of mental immersion. So overall, half-elves, I quite like half-elves. They're one of, out of the Player's Handbook base book, they're one of the species that I will most definitely play. I haven't played one in a while, but over the course of my D&D years, from AD&D to 3.5, I've played a good number of half-elves. I've had people play half-elves at games I've run. I think it's interesting, particularly with all the variants of human races and of elven races. You can really pick an interesting sort of character. Now you're just limited to, Caucasian human and a high elf. You could take someone of like a Forgotten Realms, like a Rashmani. So you're like someone from India, basically, or you put a part drow in there, or a part of an elf from a bloodline of fire. There's so many different crazy sort of elf things you put in there. You can bring those ideas in there to bring even more flavor and interest, to make half-elves more and more distinct. When you start taking less normal species parts and putting them together. Now, of course, in D&D, the default standard is always, I'm half human, which, quite honestly, can be a bit boring. You take a half-elf and splice it up with something else. A half-elf, half-orc in the Mongoose. I don't think it's called Complete Orc, but it's the red sheen ones that look like the AD&D complete books from 2nd edition. Mongoose put out a line for 3 and 3.5 that looked, the covers were pretty much knockoff artwork for that. Now, I don't think it was called Complete, but something like that for orcs. They have a half-orc, half-elf combination, which to me was just wonderful. Not that it had any statistical powers, but the idea was great. I said, I'll definitely want to play. That's definitely on my list of things to play. I thought that would be interesting. A great backstory there on how you could bring that about. And you could think it also, if an elf can breed with a human, and a human can breed with an orc, why couldn't they breed together? Perhaps it's even more likely or more common, and perhaps there's other things an elf can breed with. How about an elf ogre? How about, we start spinning around the mind and seeing what we come up with. There's a lot of interesting different ideas out there, but just out of the base handbook, the half human, half elf, there's a lot of exotic quality you can bring in that, even if you're playing the standard normal Caucasian, standard normal high elf smash, which is what you typically see in artwork for half elves. It's nearly always that case for half elf. However, that's only one possible variant, because remember, you have loads of different pieces. A half Caucasian, half drow. That's going to look and feel a lot different. If you have a half Eurasian and a half gold elf, again, you have different qualities, different facial features, and you're going to have different texture to your skin. You're going to have a different sort of backstory. You could really, what I'm saying is, take all the possibilities out of the two groups and examine them when you're going to play a half elf. You could add, with just the slightest change there, a tremendous different aspect to the way your character looks, to make your character very, very interesting. And I think that that's really always where you want to go when you're playing that half elf. Now, when 4th edition came out, the half elves had a +2 bonus, and I don't know if I saw it in a video from Wizards. This was an official Wizards deal. It was either a video from Wizards or it was in the book. I can't remember. I know someone out there will know, and probably 18 of you will post it in the comments below. Now, they said, this is great. They gave half elves a +2 Constitution bonus. They said, it's great. Now we're finally seeing, finally, now we're finally seeing people playing half elves for reasons other than story. That's not fucking great! You should be ashamed that people are playing anything for reasons other than story. Story is everything. Context is everything. Background is everything. Character concept is 100%. And when you veer out of that, you veer into the land of being mad but. Don't be but. Your main man says, smack them in the mouth when they say things like that. When they recoil, drop them in the DDT. 1, 2, 3. Now, those sorts of individuals, it sickens me. That kind of comment utterly sickens me, because guess what? Any fool that says that does not understand the richness of RPGs. What they understand is sticking their hand in your pocket, pulling it out, not giving you the product that you have paid for. And the product you have paid for is the immersive mystery of the dreamland expanding into your mind, the ethereal game space. And if you think for a fucking second that a 5-foot hex was going to replace that, I feel bad for you, son, because you've never got to that land, and you just don't understand the catastrophe and explosion of creativity that can embark upon your journey into gaining excellence. Now, a statement like that makes no sense. And you can see clearly that Constitution was just thrown onto the half-elf there because we didn't have a race in the standard book that just had that just cod bump like that. You know, so let's just throw that cod bump on them and call it good. So, as a problem, and the reason it's a problem is it doesn't make any sense. Elves have a greater degree of fragility to their bodies than humans do. Humans do not have a bonus to Constitution. Elves have a greater degree of fragility to their bodies than humans do. This means elves have a Constitution penalty. Humans don't have a Constitution bonus. Where the fuck does their Constitution bonus come from? It doesn't make any sense. It is simply a mechanic for the sense of appeasing a player. And that is never, ever acceptable. For me, when I read that I think that was pretty much, I think, the first huge nail in the coffin of D&D 4th edition for me. And I said, well, it's in a role-playing game. A role-playing game is something that allows you to suspend disbelief. And yeah, I mean, you can't with faulty logic. It's faulty logic attempting to cover just straight rules to facilitate power gaming, to facilitate optimal builds and other trash like that quite frankly the gaming industry should be sickened by and ashamed of, as your main man is. And when you step out of the side of the box of character, you're not role playing anymore, man. You're just, you might as well just sit there and just roll dice around and shame yourself, because that's everything. You understand? That is everything. And if you watch my channel, if you take one thing, only one thing, and I say you should take a lot more away, but if you take only one thing away, what you need to take away is the idea of concept, of creating it here and bringing it forward. Form over function. When you have form over function play, you're going to do great. When you have a book, when you have comments from creators that design function over form play, you're going to take away the experience of a limited function over form style, which is just absolutely what you don't want. It is the antonym of opulence. It is the rise of bootiness. And the half-elf has a great ability to interface with other cultures in ways that can be most interesting. And I thought certain ideas they did, like in 3.5, where they boosted it up a little bit. I thought they boosted up a little bit, but stayed within the culture. So stayed within the believability. Okay, well, they have bonuses to diplomacy. Oh, bonuses to diplomacy. Well, that makes sense. I could see how they might be forced into a situation socially to develop those ideas, along with the innate sort of never really mentioned but underscored charisma of an elf. How that might manifest through a bonus to diplomacy, through a bonus to some other skills like that, which I thought was, certainly a way to give them just a little bit more power, but still keep them inside the confines of what makes sense for a half-elf. So overall, I'd like to hear what you think of the half-elf, what you think about that idea of simply just throwing bonuses onto something in such an arbitrary and clearly mechanical reason for, just shunting off the idea of fluff to being of no value at all. So tell your main man what you think about the half-elves. Feel free to hit your video responses. Let's talk about